rocks at us. They haven't hit yet.
10-9, who's throwing rocks?
Male party with camo, and we've been lacrosse stick is hitting our cruiser.
Authorize arrest, Mike 9 at 10.
Windshield of our cruiser's broken.
Mike 1, are you copying? Just stage your members accordingly.
Incredibly, that video is not some citizen journalist showing how Ontario's provincial police are absolute doormats in the face of thugs, masked thugs on the street. That video was actually deliberately and proudly published by the OPP commissioner, who boasted about him, who said it was exemplary, who said it was proud of the law enforcement. There was no law enforcement there. And I wonder if he would have demanded that his police sit still and not defend themselves if the windows had been smashed through and if it was their faces being hit with lacrosse sticks and rocks. They didn't even say the word stop. They sat there and took a beating. That was a crime you saw, an assault on property, destruction of property. There were many crimes there, and they sat and smiled, and the top cop was proud, and the message was sent. Caledonia is a lawless zone. Message sent to both sides. The criminals who now know they can do just about anything, and law-abiding citizens who know the cops will do just about nothing. And joining us now is our own David Menzies, who was at that Caledonia showdown. David, the fact that the OPP commissioner was proud of that inaction is actually much more disturbing to me than the fact that a couple of young thugs smashed a car. Thugs are thugs. Where's the top cop?
It is disturbing, but we have to go back to the history of Caledonia, Ezra. This really ignited in 2006. And you got to look at the players at the time. The premier was Dalton McGuinty. Now, Dalton McGuinty, as the opposition leader, the Liberal opposition leader, was constantly, throughout his career, badgering the Mike Harris PCs about the handling of the Ipperwash protests in which the native, Dudley George, was shot and killed by a member of law enforcement. A few years go by, Dalton McGuinty is now the premier, and suddenly Caledonia breaks out. The premier is now in the position where, oh my gosh, I can't be seen as being heavy-handed towards the natives. This is how I built my street cred in the Ontario legislature, being a champion for native justice. So it was paralysis by analysis. The OPP commissioner of the day, Ezra, was Julian Fantino. Previously, a really big law and order kind of top cop. That went out the window. It was stand down, stand down, stand down. It was to treat the natives as the victims and the townspeople as the aggressors, when in fact it was the actual opposite way. And so that's why you had kidnappings, physical assaults, arson, car theft, houses being burned down, you name it, Ezra. The police turning a blind eye, the police telling residents, phoning 911, sorry, we can't go there. That's the no-go zone. The no-go zone. Meanwhile, I think the ultimate tragic point of how identity politics was ruling the day in Caledonia was when there were citizens marching to have a peaceful protest, came to the roadblock where there was all kinds of anarchy behind the roadblock, and they planted Canadian flags in a vacant lot, and they were arrested and handcuffed, and they were charged with disturbing the peace.
When did that happen?
That was in that period from, I'm going to guess probably 2007 onward. It was, before 2010. I'm not sure exactly of the date. And I will say this to your audience, Ezra. The late, great journalist, Christy Blatchford, wrote a masterpiece about these dark days of Caledonia starting in 2006. It's called Helpless. And believe me, what a perfect title. If you were a law-abiding, tax-paying citizen, you were helpless because of the Premier of the day, and the OPP Commissioner of the day.
Yeah, what a disgrace. Now, I understand you were out there recently. What did you see when you were out there?
Yeah, well, we were attracted to this area, Ezra, as well as other mainstream media elements. And I knew the mainstream media wasn't going to cover this fair and square. The Toronto Star, they have a fellow writing this. His title, I'm not making this up, he's the social justice reporter. So you know where he's going. In fact, one of the angles of his story isn't the occupation of Meadows, the housing development that has been stillborn for years now. But he went off on this tangent of the mayor of Caledonia having a conflict of interest because his daughter has a deposit down on one of the houses. Well, yeah. She's paying full market price. She's put down the deposit. She's waiting for a house that might never be built, right? Well, there's no scandal there, but that's the scandal, not the fact that Schuyler Williams, you know, the leader, right, the chief agitator, I would call it, the fellow who says, I have time to break bread with anybody, break bread or break heads, because when we went there in August, Ezra, Schuyler was supposed to arrange a meeting with us. We went out to Meadows, where you cannot go now because they got an excavator and they ripped up the road. You know, thousands and thousands of dollars of damage. Even a 4x4, I don't think, could get over that hump. And basically, when we went there to speak, a mob approached us. Our bodyguard said, time to go. There's going to be no powwow here, and we left. So we were, what got our interest up was the fact that there was lots of social media chatter that BLM and Antifa people...
That's Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter, thank you, were bussed in from Toronto, which they were. These are the paid professional protesters who don't want a peaceful resolution. Right. They love anarchy, and they joined the native agitators, right? And it's not all natives that are, you know, gung-ho with this movement, I should point out. And the idea, the threat was, we are marching past the OPP barricade, right down Argyle Street to the bridge, and we are going to do whatever we want. We are going to steal what we want, burn what we want, destroy what we want. So we heard this and we said, we got to go there. Thankfully, it was all bark, no bite. They marched up to the police barricade, and they were met by townspeople, who I should point out, Ezra, off camera, said, we are sick and tired of this. This is enough is enough. We have to take back our town. Not one, except for one individual, Mr. Bradbury, would come on camera because they are scared to death of being doxxed and potentially having their house burned down, which has happened in the past in Caledonia.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, is there any political entity, a mayor, a premier, a police chief, a prime minister, a party leader, who is for the rule of law there? Do you know if the federal conservatives have said anything? I presume the head of the OPP speaks for Doug Ford.
Yeah.
Has he said anything? Is there anyone in the entire Canadian political ecosystem who is against this lawlessness?
This is the time for Doug Ford, instead of having a press conference, which he did the other day, where he goes before a podium and does the John Tory line, like when parks are being taken over by anarchists, this is unacceptable, and does nothing.
Yeah.
This is the time for Doug Ford.
It's unacceptable, but he accepts it.
Yeah, thank you. That's the bitter irony, isn't it, Ezra? This is the time for Doug Ford to say, this is unacceptable, and we are for law and order, and we have to restore law. If you want to talk about these land claims, come to the government. This is how it's done in civilized countries. We sit down at a table and negotiate. If you don't like how the negotiations go, or you lose, you know what you do? You go to the courts.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.